Australia have done it again. Sri Lanka, you were in it. Sri Lanka, you had it. And then it all went pear-shaped. Dimuth Karunaratne fell 3 short of what would have been his maiden ODI 100. He was playing the perfect captain's knock in what would have been the perfect chase and was the perfect chase for just about 32 overs. They were 2 for 186 at that stage. They needed 149 of 108 with 8 wickets in hand. These days, you think that's possible. And Aaron Finch at the end is not only applauding that his joint career highest 153 is not in a losing effort, because he knows that not for the first time in this tournament, his team were under pressure. It needed the quality of Mitchell Starc to get wickets at the right time, along with a little bit of self-destruction from Sri Lanka that hands Australia a well-deserved 87-run win. That's what they managed at the end of the day. Key knocks from Stephen Smith and Glenn Maxwell, and contributions with the ball from just about everyone, seeing the Aussies pick up another couple of points and see Sri Lanka join the ranks of Pakistan and the West Indies, who'd say, what if they'd only just batted a little better for a little longer, they could have upset the Aussies. Mike Hussey thinks my introduction's absolutely rubbish, because he thinks that Australia have outplayed Sri Lanka and deserve to be winners today. But even you, while watching that chase, Huss, felt, oh, Sri Lanka are in this. They have this game.
No, not at all. Sri Lanka played well for a large period of that batting chase, but you touched on it perfectly. They just needed to do it for longer, and that's the difference between maybe the average teams in the competition and the very good teams in the competition. They've got high quality players. Sri Lanka, they got themselves into a position where they were right on top, and I think they had the Australians worried.
Yeah.
But the Australians just stuck at their task, kept doing the basics, and bang, opened up one end with Mitchell Starc, and then just kept the pressure on the Sri Lankans and really tightened things up. And yeah, unfortunately, they felt the pressure, and Australia a comfortable win in the end.
Yeah, that's what we were saying even during that chase, Ajit. Yes, Sri Lanka looking good, Karunaratne looking good, but they are Mitchell Starc overs. We always knew those could be the difference.
Yeah, I think firstly they got 335.
Yeah.
It's funny, you look at this Australian team and you feel there's something missing in their bowling in particular. Even their batting doesn't seem settled. You don't know whether that's their best 11, but someone or 2 or 3 players every game are putting their hand up when needed and getting the job done for them. And that's all you need at this stage. The aim is to get through that top 4. And at the moment, Australia just keeps doing it. Mitchell Starc, obviously, their spearhead. I'm not quite sure it's the best Australian 11 that's on the park, but they're getting the job done at this point.
Well, one pleasing thing from the Australian perspective is, well, and I've been worried about this 5th bowling option all the time. Well, Glenn Maxwell actually did a pretty good job today.
Yeah.
Yes, granted he had, I think, 3 left-handers to bowl to for most of his overs. And I thought the Sri Lankans maybe just missed a trick there. Perhaps they still should have tried to be proactive and put some pressure on Glenn Maxwell at that stage. Particularly, maybe have a look at him for a couple of overs, but then they had to keep the momentum going. And that 5th bowler was one they could have attacked, but they allowed Glenn Maxwell just to bowl.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like we had the chat for the South Africa-Afghanistan game. The top order seems to be doing their job, laying platforms in the hope that someone comes and finishes it. And now it looks like the top order only has to finish it. Against Sri Lanka, in spite of experience, Angelo Matthews, Pereira, Milinda Sriwardana was bottom. You felt they had the long batting order, but it needed one more player to go on?
Yeah, well, probably needed the captain to go on and get a big 100 like Aaron Finch to mirror him. He played beautifully. He probably deserved a century, to be honest. But unfortunately, he was out for 97. If he had have gone on to make that 130, 140, have those other attacking players bat around him, then they may have got a lot closer. But it wasn't to be today.
I'm sure Dilshan is eagerly waiting to look back at this. He's been listening to this very patiently. And that moment of Karunaratne's wicket, Dilshan, it looked like that he just slowed down a bit. It was a maiden ODI 100 in a big World Cup game against Australia that he was eyeing. It almost felt like that played on his mind. Would you call that the key turning point of this game?
Definitely, I think he's played really well. We saw he's from the first ball, he's positive body language. He used his feet. He's done really well. First, especially with Kusal Pereira, he's done really well. He's put the pressure for the top bowlers in the world, like Starc, Cummins. They are the top bowlers at the moment in Australian side. They put pressure to these 2 bowlers. I think he bat really well. One point I think we missed after Kusal Pereira got out, they should send right hand. The thing is, Maxwell's bowling. Thing is, we have a lot of batting today. I think should send the Dhananjay also doesn't matter. He said he bat today number 8. He's one of the opener early in Sri Lankan side couple of games. I think we should send him because of Maxwell try to bowl middle overs rather than send Tiriman. And other point of view, after Kusal had a great start, he know he have enough experience. Stark came second spell. He should little bit not take a risk against Stark. He should bat normal. Then he can take the extra attack for the other bowlers. I think that couple of things we miss, and every batsman take the start and throw their wicket. Tiriman, Kusal Mendis, everyone take the stars. Then they are throw their wicket. I think this everything is. I think we didn't do well in the middle overs and middle order.
That's an excellent observation you make, Dilshan, because Tirumana's innings had almost arrested the momentum that was being given earlier on by Kusal Perera and Karunaratne. And I take your point that maybe Dhananjay De Silva, who's not utilized coming in at 8, didn't work, a right-hander that you would have liked to see. Now, at the end of this innings, if you're a top-order batsman, which you are you looking at this game and saying, no, I should have gone on and then the game would have been different? Or are you looking at, you took a selection call to extend and deepen the batting. You brought in Shrivardhana and you dropped Suranga Lakmal. Are you blaming that middle order more for not keeping the nerve after the start, or do the one of Karunaratne or Kushal Mendis at the top need to go on?
I think it's they after starting really well, one of the best start this tournament we had in this competition. I think after start this kind of start, middle order should play same way, same positive mindset. I think that's why rather than send Tiriman, he's a little bit slow, he take very slowly. Thing is that momentum we don't want to change. That's why I mentioned might be send De Silva. He's a very good spin player. Keep going the same speed. Might be help for the middle order. That little bit stuck in Tiriman takes some time. That old momentum little bit shift to the Australian side. That kind of change we should take, chasing 300 plus runs. I think another thing is I don't know why Tiriman, Tisara Pereira came before Kusal Dhananjay. He's one of the main batsmen. Dhananjay, no idea why they sent Tisara top up Dhananjay.
All right, now there are some very pertinent tactical issues that Dilshan's pointed out, and it turns out to be not a great day of the usage of Dhananjay De Silva, who had a good day with the ball, and we spoke at half-time of how he could have had a full 10-over spell, like Dilshan said, broken up. So a few things tactically to take away for the Sri Lankan camp, and it did look like they'd done more than 50% of this innings, right? And as Melinda Farrell will tell me now, it did look like a lot of those Sri Lankan fans thought the game was theirs for just over 30 overs. Mel Farrell's no Australian fan, but she could tell the difference between what looked like an atmosphere that backed Sri Lanka and then, well, got a bit of a punch in the gut towards the end. Mel, take it away.
Yeah, well, I would just like to point out I'm not an Australian fan. I am a dual citizen and a very impartial reporter, unlike Mike Hussey back there, but that's okay. Those Sri Lankan fans, and I was outside
Sledge is like an Australian.
The start of that innings, they were so excited. They were very, very excited, the Sri Lankan fans. And most of the neutral fans there were on the Sri Lankan side. I reckon it was about 80-20, the ratio there. And just the way they got off to that absolutely cracking start. The atmosphere just went through the roof here at the Oval, and then you slowly felt it being sucked out as those wickets started to fall. One thing that we were talking about up there, I know you mentioned Glenn Maxwell and the way he bowled his spell in the middle there. We were kind of thinking, once he got up to about 7 overs, we were looking at it going, wow, they've got 7 overs out of him and no one's got him away. And we wondered if perhaps, maybe both sides have misread the pitch a bit and it wasn't necessarily so easy to get the spinners away. So that obviously then allowed them to keep back someone like Mitchell Stark later on, which proved to be, the huge game breaker, really. I still think it sort of feels like, despite what Mike Hussey might think, that Australia kind of keep getting away with these ugly wins. That won't matter in the scheme of things. If ugly wins get them into the final 4, then they'll be okay with that. but they still seem to have so many questions around their lineup. And one thing that you might think that those first 30 overs have done in their bowling innings is perhaps put a bit of pressure on them to really make a decision on whether or not to wait for Marcus Stoinis to be fully fit, whether or not they might bring Mitchell Marsh in there, because that seems to have such an impact on the balance of their side with the squad that they have available to them. So by the time we got to about 7 down, the Sri Lanka fans were pouring out of the stadium. I'm afraid there was to be no repeat of that marvellous chase that they managed to pull off against India 2 years ago here against India. But still, Australia, I'm not fully convinced yet. I'm not fully convinced. We'll see what they're able to come up with against Bangladesh in Nottingham later on in the week.
Yeah, I know. Many thanks, Mel Farrell. I'm sure that's your impartial, objective, dual citizen speaking, that you're not fully convinced with this Australian team. I take Mel's point, though, and I'll maybe put that to you. It does seem like all the pieces aren't together, and yet Australia are picking up points.
I totally agree. Mel's spot on, as Ajit was as well saying earlier. I think there's still some headaches in that Australian camp. They wouldn't be 100% happy with how things are going, despite getting the results. There's a concern over the 4th and 5th bowler, for one. Without Marcus Stoinis in the team, there's a concern over the middle order batting as well, getting that combination right. They'd want more runs from Khawaja as well. That'd be a concern as well. So they'll be delighted that they're getting those ugly wins, as Mel likes to put it, and putting the points on the board. But they're far from the finished product. And that might excite them a little bit as well, thinking, OK, we're still getting these wins, but we're a long way off our best as well.
Reminds you of any IPL team that you've been associated with at all?
That's the dangerous part about it, or part about that team. I mean, they know they can get better. I'm sure there'll be a couple of other players who'll stand up at some stage. Even the opening sort of today, you expect Behrendorff to start if he plays. Whether that's because they don't want 2 left-armers to start, you're not quite sure, because he does bowl better with the new ball. And then you have Cummins to follow, which might make it even more of a potent attack than otherwise.
I mean, I've saw what Alan Border wrote recently about this team, saying they're not playing their best cricket, they're still picking up the points. Mike Hussey seems to be echoing that. They did put in perhaps their best batting performance of this World Cup, or collectively, so they'll take that from this game. They'll also take the fact that both Patrick Cummins and Mitchell Starc are now right up there amongst the tournament's leading wicket takers. And if they continue to be amongst the tournament's leading wicket takers, you can assume that Australia will get out of jail, maybe a harsh word, once you score 330, but they'll certainly defend more scores than perhaps other teams. That's how good they are. The points table looks good as well for Australia, but for that, you call it a blip now against India. There's no shame in losing to India these days, but 4 wins out of 5 puts them sitting pretty and crossing New Zealand as well. There's a chance that India will make up some ground just under them as well. Let's take the final word from Dilshan, though. They can take a lot of positives from this game. After being out of action for 11 days, Dilshan, a few tactical glitches, and it's still a long tournament. They still have a lot of games to go. Would you like to see them just solve these few tactical calls and this is a good Sri Lankan team, or are there bigger issues for you from what you've seen today?
We can take a lot of positive from this game, but again, definitely middle order should fix, definitely. Otherwise, we can't go forward on this tournament. Definitely, middle order should click. That's the main worry about me. Very quickly, we have to sort the middle order.
All right. Many thanks to Tilakratne Dilshan. We will continue getting his thoughts as the tournament goes on. That's if Sri Lanka don't pick him up and put him into the dressing room with his sharp tactical analysis that he's got. Thank you to Ajit Agarkar and Mike Hussey. Viewers in the Caribbean, we now move to the post-match presentation where Mark Nicholas is with both captains. And for viewers on ESPN Cricinfo, this is where we leave you. The next time we'll be live, we'll be building up to India v Pakistan. Until then, from all of us on ESPN Cricinfo Matchday UK 2019, it is bye-bye.